Welcome to True Health Live, your favorite public health podcast. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and audio on your favorite podcast platforms. If you're interested in public health, then this is the space for you. Greetings, everyone. Can we be heard? I'm not sure. Hopefully we can be heard. Peace, everyone. How are you doing? We haven't been here in a minute. It's been a month.
Peace. It's good to be here, right? To be back.
Hi, everyone.
So I am Deidre Sully, MPH, also known as Yafe, and as usual, I'm joined with my beautiful co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I am Yakira Eden or Precious Stephanie. Happy to be here.
And I'm Anishka Gopilal. Also happy to be here and join the conversation again.
Okay, so today we are talking about, as the thumbnail said, fashion affects our health. So it's more of a statement. Where normally, sometimes we ask a question, but it doesn't mean that there's not a question there. But I think sometimes we know certain realities, or we know certain truths, and so it's important to call them out, right? So in this case, we're talking about fashion and how it affects our health, or fashion affects public health, however you want to say it, because it is the truth. And I'm going to just jump over to the chat really quick. Peace on the radio. Peace, Master Menulek. How are you? Please feel free to join in. As I said, we're talking about fashion, and not necessarily from the general sense where we always talk about fashion and mental health. You know, we'll get into that, but really about how it affects our physical health, as well as like the environment, which also does trickle down to our physical health. These are things that we should be aware of. These are issues that are being, discussed, but not necessarily, in the mainstream. Because why? Fashion is a big industry. It's $1 billion industry, and much like other industries, some in healthcare, who wants to disrupt, that money flow, right? So then, not everything gets the attention that it deserves. So the first thing, let's start out like, well, what is fashion, right? And it can be our personal style. It can be the a la mode, of the style of the season, of a given people, right, or particular person. It is something that is used to identify. It is a lot of times, form over function, most times, especially when we think about high fashion, because it's like, well, what do we need that for? Don't get me wrong, because I love looking at me some beautiful gowns. But it's like, what, do I need it? No. Am I going to use it? Probably not, unless I'm going to some sort of shishi fa-fa event, a wedding or something. And even then, some of the extravagance of some of these things are not necessary. Even for those individuals who do, wear those types of garments on a regular basis, they don't necessarily repeat them, so then what happens to all of that clothing? So that's what we're going to get into today. So and please feel free to put into the chat, what is fashion, what your idea of fashion is. So question that I did have is, like, when we think about fashion, remember I mentioned style. Do we pick our own style? That's a question. Like, do we pick our own style, or is it something that is manufactured for us, or subtly or subliminally manufactured, and then we go along with it? So put some of your answers in the chat, and if you're watching this after, feel free to put some of your answers in the comments, and we'll definitely get back to you and dialogue with you on what some of your thoughts are. But I would like to hear from you ladies. Like, what do you think? Like, do we pick our fashion? Do you pick your own style?
Go ahead.
I think our style is just heavily influenced by what we see, right? Because what is style? Who brought it up? Like, where did it come from? Things like that. So I think everyone is just influenced from what they see, rather it be like in their personal lives, like with folks walking in the streets, or what they see on television and entertainment. And then you get to kind of pick and choose, what is representation of who you are, how you feel. And for me personally, I would say a little bit of both, because I may see something, I'm like, oh, that's too extravagant. That's not me, right? Or I may see something and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty color. I think it looks nice on my complexion. So my style varies. It does. Sometimes I am influenced on things that I like that are more representative of how it makes me feel. You know how that saying goes, like it's the like a particular color looks good against your skin, right? And so like I look at things like that, like, oh, this color complements my complexion, or whatever the case is. And for me, it's what makes me feel good on the inside, and I'll wear it. Also, to take it a step further, if it's a particular brand or designer, they
Yeah.
have to be in alignment, like, so it can't be someone who is, like, racist or have it goes against my beliefs. Then I'm not going to support that brand. I don't care how good the color looks against my skin, right? um so that's, hopefully that answers your question about my style. It's what I like, what I, but also the meaning and purpose behind it of the
Yeah.
creators, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely say historically, I think the mission is for our style to be dictated, right? I think that's the mission of the fashion industry, right? And it's clear. They literally tell you a season or two in advance what the
Yeah.
trends will be. So they set the trend and then tell you, hey, this is what you need to buy. But for those who may not recognize it, those trends are based on what's on the runway seasons before, right?
Yeah.
So right now,
Mhm.
if we're in the winter, if we're in the summer, actually the winter collection is being featured right now to say this is
Mhm.
what's trending for next winter, so that all of the and that would be what one might describe as the top brands, right? So the top brands
Okay.
are saying this is the standard. So then all of the department stores and those buyers then say, oh, okay, so we're doing bell bottoms again. All right, well, we won't do the $1,000 bell bottoms, but we will, like, each tier, right, will make there. So there'll be the $500 bell bottom, and then there'll be the $100, and then there'll be the $10. And that is how it is intended. But I will say that is not. For those who align with a specific cultural imperative, that is not, right. That is not how we decide on our fashion.
Mhm.
It's much more about alignment with what is best spiritually, and what is most appropriate for the journey.
Mhm.
For the journey. I'll
Don't
just
close it off.
it might just be. It might
No,
just
I
be.
nothing.
I gotta say, to like what Precious was saying, I don't look at any of that stuff. I really don't. I'm not one to, oh, that, because some things, I don't know. I've been like that ever since I was younger. I don't look at the fashion shows and what's the trend for. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
that's cute, and I might have been like 5 seasons ago. Like,
That used to
Right.
be
some
me.
things
That
are
used
just
to be me. That's how I
classic.
know so
Some
much.
things are classic, and I like classic things. And so I'm just like, whatever. I don't even feed into that. I like what I like. If it looks good, rather if it's 5 seasons prior. I don't even know what season it is anyway. So you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I like it. It goes with my outfit. It makes me feel good. Whatever. It's safe for me. It's safe for my environment. It's not causing any harm to those around me or to myself. I might like the designer and they represent something that I believe in, or you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even look at them things. Half of the times I'm confused about the design anyway. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Like, what is that metal? Is it going
Right. It's like,
Right.
how do I wear this? Right.
Right. Where does this go? Like, it's too small. I can I saw something that said they were, I'm not gonna name the brand, but it was a undergarment and it was so small. And someone came on to a social media platform and was like, who are you making that for? It can't be like Caribbean people, or because they can't fit this, like, it's like, it was just, it was so
string?
culturally inappropriate for like women who are curvy, and you know what I'm saying. So yeah, some of those things you look and you're like, what the heck is that? Where does it
Yeah.
go? Where does it fit?
Right. It's like, what do you do with this? And
It's
have you
supposed
ever
to
had
go.
that where it's like you have a button somewhere and it's like, well, where do I put this? How do I hook it up to here? How do I close it? It's just like, well, what was I thinking when I bought this? And it's like, because it was on the rack. And
Right.
to your point, well, to both of your points, like, about like the trends and how they're set seasons in advance, it doesn't even matter. We don't have to watch the runway shows. And I have been to one of the fashion week shows once, and I had no clue what was going on. I was just like, there's people and they're walking and they have on clothes and it's dark. Like, I had no clue like what was happening, but it was an experience. But even still, and I was just like, well, who's gonna wear that? Like,
Right.
but what happens is there's this phenomenon. It's not even a phenomenon. It is an actual reality. It's what happens. It's called fast fashion. And it is that, it's kind of like that Devil Wears Prada moment. I don't know if you like, the film Devil Wears Prada, where the main character like scoffs at something, or she laughs at something they're holding, and then Meryl Streep, I do like me some Meryl Streep. Her character like literally breaks down like that little acrylic thing you have on was decided by the people in this
Right.
room because of da 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 da. And it was, and even though it was a film, I was like, you know what? But she's right though. Like, if we pay attention to the fashion shows, like, it's a small like collective of people at like the top fashion houses, and then they get into like the magazines and whatnot, and those are the ones who decide like this is what it is. But then what happens is it filters down to where the rest of us can afford it, to the department stores, or like, not even department stores, but like, like I don't know what you call the boutique stores that you see in like, downtown areas or malls, or whatever. And they have their buyers, and they figure out like what factories and whatever producers, they can work with to get a similar looking garment out for cheaper and much quicker. And that's what they call like the fast fashion, because also the trends, they change so frequently that you can't keep up, which goes to like, what we were speaking about off camera, like the mental health piece, like, like how do you keep up with some of these things? But what's even more is that because they need to make it so quickly and so cheaply, they're making them with a lot of like synthetic fibers, things that are detrimental to our health. And that's like the meat of what we're talking about today. Like, so not only is it detriment to us physically, and like what those fibers and whatever they're made out of leach into our system, like through our skin, because the skin is permeable, but also like how it leaches into waterways and things like that. So yeah, like, so I you're exactly right. Like, I'm like, I don't watch fashion shows like that. Like, I'm not sitting waiting for Victoria's Secret fashion show, and I didn't mean to give them any, play, but I'm not looking for like wings and stuff. Like, well, I mean, there's one kind of wing, but like that's for menstrual health. But like, I'm not looking for like that kind of stuff. And but it's a big deal. But it's like, it's almost like we're not able to hide from it, unless we are following our own cultural imperatives, where it's like, I'm gonna make my own, I'm gonna go and figure out how to spin, weave some fabric out of whatever material, whatever fiber. I think I might just have to go to the material store.
You gonna spindle? You got a spindle? What? You're taking it far back.
I don't know, and I don't know if I am, have the capacity to learn it, but I can definitely go and get some, natural material and work with that. That's what we're gonna do.
Well, I know Anu Radio is here, and if I'm not mistaken, she did actually say she wanted to spin yarn into fabric.
So.
She did say that. No, I know for sure. I remember. So she'll be the one spinning.
I'll purchase fabric from you.
Right.
Did say in the chat, she would say fashion is how and what you use to form your appearance, right? Mm-hmm. Because it can be used as a form of self-expression. Expressing identity, or what your cultural imperative is, right? Those things as well. Like when we think about batik, right? And those are, what's made in West Africa, and they come out with designs every year. The same thing when we think of not kente, but the African fabrics. There's different designs that come from different countries, and they just the same way The Western world has like, oh, we're gonna have fashion week or whatever. They have different designs that come out, and based and I've learned this from Chief Yuya. Based on the design, you can tell like where it came from and what year it was, made. So, if you're moving based on your own cultural imperative, like, yeah, like you don't necessarily have to ascribe, and you can stay completely out of, the Western kind of mindset of like what the trends, are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're going to begin to get into toxicity and fabrics. But I'm thinking even as it pertains to trends, the first thing that and one of the things that we in our new were are instructed to do is to be cognizant of the fabrics that you're wearing, right? And to not mix fabrics. So what you'll discover, right? If you decide I'm only going to look for cotton, linen, and silk, right? Let's just stick with those three natural fibers, right? What you're going to find is that in most stores, most department stores, most mass market, mall, whether it's a boutique or not, you're going to find it very, very challenging in 2023 to find 100% anything. Everything is a blend. Everything is mixed with lycra or some synthetic fiber.
Five
And
index.
right. At least 5%. It's always 5% spandex for some strange reason. But I know one part of that narrative, right? So that rational brain will say, well, this is so that it'll fit better. Because when an item doesn't have lycra or doesn't have that synthetic fiber, it doesn't fit all body types the same way. Okay, sure, perhaps, depending on what kind of look you're going for. But I also challenge you to consider the health implications of having those synthetic fibers woven into what was already natural. Because what you'll find is that, and we'll go through it, like some of my research says there are over, was it 3,000? I have to go back and look. I think it was about 3,000 chemicals that are routinely used in processing fabrics alone,
Yeah.
ranging from fire retardants
Yeah.
to, yeah, like waterproofing
Fire
agents to,
retardant. I'll tell you that. And when they catch
let me
fire,
tell you something, right?
right? That was very fire marshal. But I'm like, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I have a story.
let's hear it.
So what you're saying, like those are the detriments to like synthetic fiber. And let's parse out like what is a synthetic fiber. Synthetic is man-made, so it's many of the things that you already mentioned: rayon, lycra, viscose. The one we all know that's in everything, polyester. Those are like some examples of man-made, and some other examples of man-made fabrics also come from natural, like because they're minerals. So like gold, silver, glass, and yes, we are wearing things, or not we, but some people. Now I'm gonna say we because I haven't had a chance to transfer all of my clothing yet. So I'll say we. It is a collective statement. We are wearing some of these things. And a lot of the detriment to, especially when it comes to like the polyester, the rayon, the viscose, all of that, with the chemicals that they're putting in, and it's interesting that you said fire retardant. I'm like, because they're flammable. They're highly flammable. Like, these fibers, like, they don't necessarily all absorb water or sweat. So I don't know, like, have you ever sweat? And I'm not talking about workout wear, for example, like those things are treated in another way. But when you're thinking about like, your regular clothes and it's hot sometimes, and you'll have like a peace chief, you'll have a particularly sweaty day, because I have had them, and you're just sitting in your own juices because the fabric is not absorbing the moisture. So like they're not absorbing all of that. They melt and burn easily. So my story around that is I don't know why I did this, but you know, like when you have a flailing thread, and you know they say like don't cut it because it'll just like, you know, you have to like maybe knot it and tie it off or pull it really quickly so it kind of jams up, and then it'll be fine until you're able to actually mend it properly. So I decided, and this is because I also bead, and so one of the things we do with thread a lot of the times, we burn it when you're finishing off an end to something. Like some things you can do is burn rather than using like glue, because sometimes the glue can be toxic, etc., etc. And so I must have been beading in this moment, and I decided, let me just burn the end real quick. And it just kept going, and then the clothes started to melt, and then it was like, is this plastic? What's happening? Like I'm wearing plastic, and it was plastic. Like there are whole stores, and I won't even mention their name, but I went into this store before relocating to the South, and we'll call them First Symbol. So and the majority of their clothes are made from recycled plastic, and the idea is that they are, you know, being like sustainable, like sustaining the environment because it's recycled. Because part of the issue is a lot of the fibers and the fabrics, they end up in our waterways. You know, they, you know, the fashion industry is responsible for, you know, a lot of waste, you know. Around, it takes about 2,000 gallons of water to make just a typical pair of jeans. So like think about like all the things that are going into the water. So like their idea is like, oh well, you know, we'll do this, but those things are not necessarily the best for our skin, and also like what we breathe in, because like these, everything sheds. So like what is also being inhaled into the lungs. So that's like, you know, my story, like sandwiched in like I burned, like it started to burn, and I tried, you know, I figured like, oh, I'll just pat it out, burned my hand, burned my thigh, like it was bad, it was really bad. And it was not even a big hole that it made, but now I just use it like to wear around the house, but it constantly like scratches me like where it burns.
So it's burning
Like,
plastic.
oh my,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my clothes on fire moment. Like, okay, yeah, great. I'm wearing plastic. So yeah.
Yeah. And you know, when we talk about the chemicals that are in our clothes, we recognize, right? It's often said like the skin is the largest organ that you have. And so you recognize that that item was plastic. And we may, I mean, and for the fire retardant clothing, it's actually a requirement for children's pajamas, right? So based on historically, from what I can recall, historically, I guess with house fires, they found that there were in the synthetic fibers. I'm thinking it was probably those footy sleeping, like you know back in the
I
day, those onesies, those
that was my first thought. I'm like, oh, the
right. Like what wound up happening is during house fires, children were flammable. And so then there was some requirement that all pajamas had to have some sort of fire retardant. And so, like, I'm giving a little bit of the backstory so that we can appreciate, like, the intentions were good, right? And but then what winds up happening is now you're like putting all these chemicals on your babies because the pajamas that you're purchasing are full of chemicals, right? Full of fire retardant, along with all of the synthetic material that made them flammable to begin with. So instead of saying no, pajamas have to be a natural fiber, because those would not burn as easily. And just think about it, like, I don't know if you all have ever watched, but I remember watching one of those shows. I forgot what kind of reality show it was, but they were comparing the what say it? What was it?
Project Runway.
No. It wasn't a fashion. It was one where they like tested. It was actually like they tested the truth about items. And so they were testing like flame retardant. It was actually flame retardant firefighter gear, and they were testing like from the 1970s, like different era firefighting gear. But I just remember how some of the, even though the technology on the newer equipment, you know, like it was, the thinking was surely this will do better. In some instances it didn't, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, we may think that we're more greatly protected by what we're wearing or what's happening now, but that's not necessarily the case. And sometimes it's really, in all instances, just be aware of what you're purchasing and try to set the intention of like looking for, seeking out 100% natural fibers. Like start there.
Yeah.
They'll still be doused in chemicals, because just the dye, depending on,
It'll still be doused, but it's better.
no, they because the dyes, right? Like the
Right.
dyes that are used. So it's kind of like we're just right? It's just minimizing the exposure, but the exposure will still be there. I mean, it's kind of like when we spoke about food. We, you know, and she pointed out, peace, Chief, and she pointed out that the air is still polluted, right? The water's still polluted. So the toxins are still there. So it's like, how organic is the food really? So I think it's a similar thing. We just have to be aware and make better decisions, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, you could also hook up with on the radio and she could spindle you out some natural.
There you go. She better get to spinning. Get to spinning.
Cotton, seeds, flax,
right. And silk. What you need? Got what you need.
Right. Natural fibers can either come from vegetables or animals. So the animals that would be, yes, your silk, your leather, your wool, and then everything else, cotton, you know, those come from seeds. And like I said, I don't. First thing about spindling,
well, you even had the flax in there, so that's a good job. I didn't even think about the flax.
Flax and hemp.
That was biblical. Yeah, that was. Took it back to Bible time. There you go.
Hey. You like you're gonna say something, Anishka?
I was just saying you can't win, because one thing is another. No matter how healthy you try to be, and yeah, I totally agree. You can minimize it. Definitely try to minimize it, but we're exposed no matter which way we turn.
And I think that's the goal. You know, is yes, we are. It's like, you know, behind enemy lines. They got us on all sides. But like, what can we do to minimize the effect as best we can until because I think there still may be opportunities, right? But until you can find yourself in a place where you can, you know, make your own clothing, or, you know, create your own fabrics, or at least, or maybe even find places where you can order it from, where, you know, where you're able to vet, you know, how natural the fibers are, and even if they're sustainable, you know, because again, we're talking about how it also impacts the environment, because like I said, fashion industry has a huge impact on it. You know, 20% of global wastewater is from the fashion industry. So, you know, 2,000 gallons for one pair of jeans, you know, all that stone washing, you know, all those things that they do to get, you know, the look, you know, that is being dictated, right? That, you know, filters down to the rest of us. Say, hey, you know, like, you know, wear this. Even the plastic just got me, like with the plastic clothing. I'm like, everything is plastic. And on the front, I think when I first, because it's not an unknown thing, right? I think when I first heard about it, it's like, oh, you know, that's cool because it's sustainable, and you know, it's about reusing what we've already used, like recycling and reuse and recycle, so that we can protect the environment as much as we can. But it's like what is it? I can't remember the saying right now, but it's like it's not the devil in the details, but it's like no matter what you do, you know, there's always going to be something. So it's actually not as healthy. It might be better for the environment on the at face value, like on the front, but when you really dive deep into what's happening, it's like, well, there's still, plastic is still ending up in the waterways, because there's also the overflow, like, of clothing, because people buy clothes much more, and we wear them less long, less. Where clothing used to be made, with a certain kind of quality where you could have. I remember having pieces that lasted for years, and it was like, I like this because, like you said, they were classic pieces, right? So the quality of, how it was made was good, so you could actually keep it for a while. And nowadays, like, things are just made, like, so hastily, because again, it's that fast fashion. They're not necessarily made to be durable in that way, or weather worn, to that degree. So then they end up in, a lot of the times, like, in the garbage. So that's again how it ends up in the waterways, because of how waste is disposed of, or in landfills. Or another big thing, they end up in other countries. Like, there have been countries, and I'll put it in the chat, but there have been countries over on the continent in Africa had to say, no, stop sending us, your overflow of clothes, because we don't need this. We don't need these things. To yes. Well, from Shein. Is it Shein or Sheen?
I don't even
I
know.
don't
No,
know.
no.
Don't even act. You don't even. You don't
People
even
say it
know
both
what.
ways.
I'm like, I don't even know this thing. So I don't buy nothing from that. I don't even know how to pronounce their
That was a
name.
good setup. She's like, I don't even know how to pronounce that.
I was like,
Right.
and they last longer than 2 years. Oh wait, stop buying clothes from Shein and they'll last longer than 2 years.
Two wears.
Oh, wow. 2 wears.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like
Fall apart. Things fall
the-
apart.
the-
Right.
You get what you pay for. That's
Right.
what it is.
But you know what? As you touch on the idea of fast fashion, if we consider how, like, I'm just going to speak to, like, my grandmother, who made all of her clothing and made clothing for her loved ones. Those pieces were made to last, right? They were made with the intention of letting out that hem, or bringing the hem up or down, so that as the child grows, these items can either go to the next little one or can adjust with that child. Even the idea of patching clothes, like, even if we're talking denim, they were made very differently than they're being made today. And I know we're going to get into some of the mental health implications, but something that one of the articles that I dug into actually spoke about the textile workers in other countries, right? In the countries that are manufacturing these chemical laden fabrics, and the implications on their health, right? So they're in the factories where these chemicals are being dipped, and they're experiencing not only skin rashes and dermatitis and those things, but they're also experiencing neurological implications as well, because they're breathing in these chemicals all day long that are affecting brain functioning. So by buying that, I was going to date myself and place me at a specific location. I was going to say buying those Bobby's clothes, right? I don't even know if people know what Bobby's is, but it's like,
Well, did you say Bobby's?
you got to be from, like, New York. Flatbush. Okay?
Wait, I got one better. C.H. Martin. That was
Who?
Bobby's. That was like I think it might have just been Jersey.
What was it?
It was like a Bobby's. It was C.H. Martin.
I don't even know that one. See, that must be the local one for
Yeah.
you.
What was the other one called? It started with a C. Is it not Clinique? Oh my gosh. Everyone had that. I cannot remember. It started with a C though.
I was thinking of Cookies, but Cookies were children's clothes.
Yeah,
so
no, it wasn't Cookies. Oh my god. It'll come to me because it's so simple.
I'm like literally like searching my brain, like,
right, me too.
what is oh my god, in the Bronx?
Clickers. Sorry. Did y'all have
Click-
Clicker? My mom
Clickers.
used to call.
No.
Is it Is it women's clothing?
Yeah.
I have seen clickers. It's like I won't say this. I don't want to name. I don't want to say all the names of these stores, but it's kind of like you know that thing in the sky that has all the colors. It's kind of like
Oh,
that.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay, yes. Because that other one that you encoded earlier, I was like, okay, I don't know what she meant
I
by
don't
that
know it
one,
either.
but
You ate what?
to eat,
You
to
ate.
eat,
Oh,
to eat.
yeah, that's a good one. Cheap.
That's a
Yes.
good one.
Cheap.
Yeah, that's the umbrella for all of the ones that we're
Mhm.
mentioning right now. But and I know we're laughing about it, but this is actually no laughing matter. A lot of the skin infections and rashes, particularly that children have,
Mhm.
you may be adjusting their diet and you don't realize that until maybe now you'll consider that it could very well be the clothes that they're wearing or even the detergent that you're
Yeah.
laundering the clothes in, right? What you're using to clean the clothes could be causing those rashes or those breakouts.
You know what? You mentioned the firefighters earlier, and I immediately thought of it's PFAS. So it's a acronym for polyfluoroalkyl substances. And these are known as like forever chemicals, and you find them in a lot of the fire retardants, like a lot of places that cause like PFAS to get into the water are like firefighter training facilities because of all the chemicals and the fire retardants and things like that. And so when you mention like even putting fire retardants in the clothes and the chemicals and all that, like these are the things that are being ingested. Even like when you can also find PFAS in like water resistant fabrics. So that's when we get into like the workout gear and the very tight fitting, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, like when I'm in the house, like I don't like to have a lot of things like flailing, you know, all over. So if I'm in the house, like I'll work out in different things. But then after finding out about all this stuff, it's like, okay, well, I have to figure out something else. We're gonna have to maybe hook up with Anu Radio and figure out how to make some durable cotton, you know, workout gear so that yeah, those things are not leaching into the skin because yeah, the skin is permeable.
Yeah. And there are stretch cotton, right? And I only know this because I had some I was like trying to research having some modest yoga attire made. And a component of that had to do with finding natural fabric. And it was much more expensive, of course, than just getting some, because if you get just 100% cotton, that doesn't really have any stretch or give based on
Mm-hmm.
how it's woven. You
Mm-hmm.
you can't really use it for workout gear, right? Because you need a little bit of stretch. And so it took some research, but you can, right? We can find stretch organic cotton.
Mm.
It's just much more difficult, and like you can't just walk into a local fabric store for it unless you're in New York and you can get to the fashion district. Then you can, but
Yeah,
otherwise you have to
I
go. You have to
did
go online.
all the stores like in and out.
Yeah, yeah. There were perks to living there for a while. Um, but yeah. I just wanted to cover that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is something that we do have to acknowledge. Like finding those natural fibers aren't always cost effective or cost efficient for people, for many people. And what is more cost effective or cost efficient is shopping at, you know,
Cheapies.
the EPs,
Cheapies.
you know, self included, you know, present company included, like shopping at the Chick EPs because you know this top is like $5.99, you know, and it's actually like okay, I could probably wear this to work, to this, to this, you know, and maybe I'll get 2-3 wears out of it, but you know, because it's the short term, right? Rather than like spending $25 just on one top that where I may need part of that $25 for something else, right? But I will say it's kind of like how I explained when we're talking about like some of the menstrual hygiene products. They may be expensive on the front end, but because they are durable, you like if you're wearing like period panties, and we can even get into that, making sure they're cotton, because right, they are not, right? But purchasing something that may be a little bit more expensive on the front end, but because of the amount of use you get out of it, it is actually more effective than short-term cheapes purchases, which actually in the long run will be more expensive. You don't see it right away, but it actually is more expensive. So I just wanted to acknowledge that part right there. So yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. I'm gonna go back really quick because I did skip on the radio's comment, and she said she agreed with you, Anushka, about working with undertones. Like they're fun to work with. Yeah, because it's true. My favorite color is actually not a color that I really wear. I wear the color or colors that work better with my skin tone. So, but it is always fun to kind of like play with things. She says trend forecasters aren't actually forecasting, but using everyday fashion from everyday people as inspiration, right? So, like, how much of it is those buyers and those, fashion house execs, like, actually looking at individuals who are more eclectic and more individual, with their style, and then they bring it to the runway and mass produce it, and then it becomes something that's for the masses. But and then not necessarily sharing where they got their inspiration from. So that I think that is also a real thing. And she also says, she asked, has fashion impacted your health at all? I guess she was asking any of us or anyone who is, watching. Um, I know, she says, I know I cannot work out in nylon, polyester, or anything.
Right. So
Yeah.
I do have a story about that actually.
Mm-hmm.
The synthetic, it wasn't my experience, but my grandmother is in the Caribbean, and she got very, very ill one day at the end of like her church service.
Mm-hmm.
And it was directly connected with what she wore. It was hot, no AC in the church, and she had on, I think, a rayon dress. And I just remember my mother like saying, it was that dress, like I told her. Like she pretty much overheated, like almost fainted, and was just like, I'm just so hot. And it's because she was wearing all of this fabric that wasn't breathable, that it couldn't wick the sweat from, all the what is it, the water wick, I think is a term that's used. It did not do that, and it actually caused her to have like a spell, I guess I'll call it. She had an actual like little situation. So, and similar to what you shared, while I haven't experienced anything to that extreme, I will say that since recognizing that those mixed fabrics are something that are working their way out of my wardrobe, there are still a few pieces. I do know I actually wind up, and I need to get rid of them. I wind up not wearing those things because even though I don't travel out of the house for work, I find that when I do wear them, because they tend to be like work clothes, right? I'm like, I am so sweaty, and what we used to say, itchy. No, what? You're muted. What do you say?
I get itchy.
You get itchy?
Or icky.
Well, I just get sweaty, and but I'm like, what's happening? And each time I wear one of those, there are a few blouses in particular, I'm just like, you know what? I can do better. Like I can do better without you in my life. So just making the decision to say, you know what, when you know better, you should do better. So since I do, I'm actually going to commit to just, I have to make a mental note of the color and try to find something comparable, because it's more about the utility. Like, oh, I don't have a shirt this color peach or this color blue, but it's not worth my sweat glands being stifled, because that's really what's happening, right?
Oh yeah, sweat glands. You know,
Choke 'em, choke 'em.
I have it's a lot of it's just I'll be wearing a lot of creams and ecru's and whites and grays. Like it's just it's what it's going to be. It's what it's going to be. Like you know, as I'm filtering things out, I'm like, and I used to be a very like wear a lot of black or wear a lot of color, and I like color. But until I can figure out like even how like you mentioned the dye, because part of that is the reason where the itching is coming from too. It's like the dye. Think about it. When you wash something red, what do you always do when you wash something red? You wash it by hand first, or you wash it by itself first. Why? Because it always leaks. So if it doesn't it doesn't wait until it gets to the water to leak. So it's leaking right onto your skin. Especially if you're sweating, it's leaking right onto your skin. So I have to like really be pay attention in the same way that we do food and read boxes. Like, okay, like where is it? What dye was it used with? So this means being more diligent about like where I purchase clothing from, like where they were made. Like, and does it mean it's a little bit more expensive? Then so be it. Or does it mean you just have to make it yourself? Then so be it.
Right.
So y'all hold me to it, and I ain't gonna say it's gonna be this year.
Hold me to it. It's on my 5-year plan. So hold me to it. 5 years.
Some point.
A 5-year plan, and we're gonna be changing over to it. I'll have all
handmade clothes.
Huh?
5 years for natural fibers or 5 years for handmade? What? It don't take 5 years.
All of it, like making sure that it's because I'm thinking of it as a complete package. So like,
okay,
buys it entirely switched over, handmade and also like making it myself. So handmade don't necessarily mean I.
No, it doesn't. Not made by your hands, right?
Somebody else's hands.
Yeah. So those are some of the really important things that we do need to know about the fashion industry, because the first thing you think is fashion and health is like esteem and body image, but that is important too, right? So we definitely wanted to touch on that. I don't know that it's anything that we don't know, but what I do want to make sure that we point out is like there's been a lot of movement in the last several years about like body positivity and things like that, because we know like the fashion industry has been like a culprit in mental health issues when it comes to self-esteem levels. Not everybody is a 9-foot tall glamazon walking down the runway. We all have different bodies, so there's the whole body positivity movement. At the same time, we do have to make sure that we're not distorting it where it's like, well, I'm gonna wear that too regardless of my size, and it's gonna be great, because it's not always great, because we do need to be paying attention to when it comes to like healthy body type. Yeah, body positivity is great, but we should always ensure that healthy body is always into that, not just like how I feel about it because of how it looks. Is it healthy? Is the body healthy? So, and I know you had some things. I see the chat. I know you had something, Anishka, to add to that about like the mental health piece.
No, exactly what you said. I think a lot of times, even to what I said in the beginning about how I feel, I like certain colors and things of that nature. But to take it to a deeper level or on another level, you have to know if it's good for your body, right? Like the materials, like we've been discussing. But then also, before we get into any of these clothing, like, is our body healthy? And I think that's most important, right? Before we go on the glitz and the glamour, or we look at television and entertainment and just say, oh, well, that looks good on her, I want to see how it looks on me, type of thing. Before we feed into all of that, let's think about our own personal health, like health, the way we're living, what we're consuming, what we're exposing ourselves to, the environment, the clothing, all of that stuff. So I think that's a big piece of it that we need to really have the conversations about, so that when we do put things on, we also are putting it on a healthy body and they're good for our body, so that we still sustain our healthy lifestyles. And that, keep in mind that everything that glitter ain't gold, right? So it might be pretty on us, it may look great, we may look fabulous, but it soaks into our skin and can cause more harm to us, right? So just being conscious of all of that. And also knowing your worth, that everything we see, everything that we take in may not be great for us. It may not add value to us just because we see it, and
Right.
because we're being told, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should have this, and you should have that. That does not mean that it's the best thing
Right.
for us.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, yeah, sometimes it like we're told like, oh, this would look good on you, and it's like, who told you that? Who told you that? Why are you lying to me? Like, so even think about like, yeah, the serpent is everywhere. Not
Hmm.
every serpent will be everywhere. And you have to be very vigilant and discerning to not let those little slippery words in your ears and then rattle around in your brain and then make
Hmm.
think like, oh, this would be good for me, and it's like, no, it's not. And even if you think so, it'll be a short-term high, but then really, and again, we'll get deeper into this when it comes to like body image and obesity and da 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 da. But like, but when really it's if you had the opportunity to have a healthier body or even lose weight, you would jump at the chance, because this is why we have a proliferation in like waist trainers, corsets, and Miami is like the capital of BBL. That is like BBL Central. So if this was not the case, then people would not be trying to get like these quick fixes.
Hmm.
And there's something to be said about that as well when it comes to like having a healthy body and like what this body positivity movement has done, right?
Hmm.
I think you have to look at it from both sides. Like, yeah, we should have healthy bodies and be proud of them, but let's not be looking in like funhouse mirrors.
Right.
And the thing. Oh, go
Oh, I'm
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
And I'm not against anyone who wants to, you know, have plastic surgery, do a nip tuck, whatever
Yeah,
makes you happy and content and with yourself. At the end of the day, I feel like as long as you're content when you go to sleep at night, that's for you, right? But for me, it's just more so once you do that, what are you doing to sustain your now
right,
better body, right? Because you can't have the same habits and
right.
continue living the lifestyle you were living with this investment that you've made on yourself and think it's not going to revert back, so if you're going to do all of that, also just pour into yourself where you're making better choices, and eating better, whatever healthy looks like, and at your pace where you're comfortable. You don't want it to be something treacherous, right? Living healthy shouldn't be like a job. It shouldn't be a dreadful task. It should be something that you rejoice in and that you love doing, because it's for your overall betterment,
Mhm.
whatever path you decide to take. I think it always has to come back to like knowing that you're doing this for self and not for others, or not for a particular image, but for yourself to be healthy and happy and whole.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know.
I would say that Yafe, when you were speaking about the idea of body positivity, right? And the proliferation of BBLs. Um, as I'm listening, I'm like, that is such a trick, right? So you tell me I should love myself
Oh,
and I should require everybody else to love me just as jiggly, flabby, saggy, and whatever, flat, whatever my circumstances are. That's the body positivity narrative, right?
mhm.
But then you give me this structure, right? This body type, and you say this is ideal and you should want to be this.
Oh,
So what part of that is
yeah.
actually positive,
Positive.
right? So it's
Right.
it's like when you said it, I'm just like, that don't even go together, right?
Oh, no. It's the
That
trick.
those two narratives, right? They don't
No.
go together at all. And even to Anushka's point, and I know we touched on it when we were speaking. I want to say it was maybe last season or 2 seasons ago, maybe the first season. I know I shared on the challenge with those quick fix, and I'm going to call it a quick fix. And I know several people who have had gastric bypass or
Mhm.
lap band procedures, and I know a few people who ballooned back up and went to have the procedure, whether the procedures failed and could not be done again due to
Mhm.
whatever the scar tissue, or actual second attempts. And my conversation with some of those people who I was close to at the time was, what part of this addresses your relationship with food? Like that, the mental, and these were healthcare practitioners, right? Mental health practitioners. Beyond the requisite, oh, I have to see a therapist, I have to see, I think it was I don't remember if it was a psychologist or just a psychiatrist or just a licensed practitioner. But beyond that, what was required to qualify for your health insurance, to pay for this, what other supports are in place to ensure that that brain connection to, I want this to help me feel better or whatever, or even hormonally, how your body calls for certain things, is going to be addressed. So I think that that's such a great point for us to like pull on when we do delve into these conversations again, because it's a hard dialogue to approach. I definitely think it is, but it's important that we have it. Yeah, it's important that we have it.
And the reason why I brought it up, because it relates to that fashion piece and that mental health piece, or esteem piece, because a lot of the times, like, they're getting these surgeries because they want to look a certain way in these clothing, these and not all the time is it like high fashion. It's like, the style star. I call it style star. Is it cooking? No. Okay. Well, it's, the site that they love to go to buy all these, it is a fast fashion style site. Now we'll just say style star.
I don't know. Okay, it's fine.
How do you say "don't go" in Spanish?
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't know. Maybe I need to pick better pseudonyms.
It's okay. I'm sure many people do. They're like, yeah, she don't get it. I just may not know the brand. Maybe that's what it is.
It's very popular. It's
okay. Style star. You just gonna tell me up there, right? She about to lip sync.
I'll tell you later.
Look, she like, let me whisper it to you. No, it's okay.
So before we go, I just want to hit up the chat what you said about the red dye. And he said, like, red dye is usually applied directly to fabrics, which is why it bleeds so much, while most other colors are added via chemical reaction. Thank you for that. Like, that's important to know, because I always wonder, like, and there's always a different reaction. I have broken out because of dyes in clothing. And, and I always wondered, like, what is it that they're putting in? But that's interesting. Like, and I wonder, and that's something to look up. And we'll, maybe we'll do that, because there's usually always a blog post attached to, not usually, but sometimes there's a blog post attached to these podcasts. So, maybe some of that will be in the podcast, like why red dye is applied directly as opposed to others, because I would think, like, something like a black would be like easier. I don't know. I don't know anything about like dyeing clothes, like the process. I'll say it like that. So that's something to pull on as well. So maybe we'll put that in the blog when it comes out after the podcast airs. So with that, I would say thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, lady?
I'm actually smiling because I have to share this story. So you talk about color transfer. I'm remembering, so in my home in New York, I had when I purchased it, I had the kitchen redone, and I had cream cabinets installed, right? They were really, I liked them. And I remember I had a housewarming party. It was really just the opportunity for like all my loved ones to come over. And one of my really, really loving, helpful cousins said, girl, I'm gonna wash these dishes. And she stood up there and washed a gang of dishes. And she leaned her knee with her deep indigo denim blue jeans on my cream cabinet. When I tell you, when she left, there was no bleach, no what do you call the eraser, magic eraser? Nothing got that indigo dye from her cheap denim jeans off of my cabinet.
Yes, I have had those, that indigo transfer from jeans.
Yeah. it just
Ooh,
makes me think, like, how is your body, like, and you
pulling that.
touched on this, how's the body like absorbing that? Because I couldn't get it off of my paint, off of my cabinets
Yeah.
at all.
That happened to me, and I bought a new truck at the time, and I had cream interiors,
Oh gosh.
and I didn't. I swear, I never wore that again. I never to this day have I put on indigo pants on jeans. Because
Yeah,
it wouldn't come off. I was so mad. I was so mad. I was like, what the heck? Nothing would work.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
I can imagine.
So
That's
be warned.
the
Yeah, be
thing for
warned.
the interior of a car because you can't control what other people are gonna wear. You know, you
Yeah,
could
I
be like,
can. I'll be like, I always have a little blankie. I'll put
Sit on this towel, right?
exactly, like you're not gonna mess. And I was anyway. That's another story. But I was like, this is my new car. Y'all not gonna be messing it up. But I do
right,
that
put your
after
seatbelt on
that
and lean
experience.
forward.
I do that. Hmm?
Yeah, I said put your seatbelt on and lean forward. Like don't
Right, right. Touch over.
Put a
hold on
little
to
goose pillow. No, but
That is
definitely,
funny.
and that also made that's what I'm like. Wait, if it's coming off the leather like this, what is it? So when I got in the house,
Right.
I took it off, and I'm like looking at my skin and everything. I was like,
Rub it.
I'm not playing with this anymore. So I literally never wore those jeans again, or purchased anything like that again.
Yeah, yeah. I had to start thinking about like because that was a trend at one point,
It
right?
definitely was.
The dark blue boot cut jeans, like and I'm dating myself,
Okay.
right? But like that was a thing, and you know because boot cut was before skinny. Just saying,
Right.
cut was before skinny. That's what we was wearing, just like they wore bell bottoms in another age, you know.
Mhm.
So boom,
Yeah.
right? LOL. So yeah, they was the bomb. Anyways, so thank you for joining us. We will, we'll be back on June 27th with another interesting topic. But I do want to say we are going to pull that thread about body positivity and true health, right? On when we come back from our break in September. But in the meantime, we will see you again on June 27th. So stay tuned and we'll see you in the forward. Peace, everyone.
Peace.